Hey everybody, here's a note from the editor, i.e. me. Unfortunately, due to some silly goosery and tomfoolery, all of my footage has a weird dream filter on it from the Canon Rebel I was shooting on. And so unfortunately, I can't edit it out. And so there is a little filter on the entire video, and I promise there's not a smudge on the screen or anything. It is just like that. Enjoy this video. Bye. Before this episode gets started, I'd like to issue a trigger warning. Today's episode will talk about ideas of domestic violence as well as some other triggering moments. I would like to give my viewers a heads up in case they are not comfortable with that, and they can just catch us in the next video. I'll be attaching links to the domestic violence hotline down below and as well as after this intro. I hope everyone enjoys, and lots of love. Hey everyone, and welcome to Final Girl Moments, hosted by me, Bella McCullough. Today, we are going to be talking about the beautiful, amazing, iconic, wonderful film, Scream, and their final girl, Sidney Prescott. Grab some popcorn and let's get started. So before we get started talking about Scream, I'm going to explain what a final girl is. So in a horror movie, there's typically a lot of tropes, like the first person to die, the stoner, the silly one, the comedic relief, the hero of the story. But then there's also the final girl. And so the final girl is not always quite the hero, but she's sometimes the one that survives all of the bullshit and is traumatized for life. A final girl is somebody who literally goes through hell and back, manages to survive, and then sometimes has to do it again in another film. For an example, Laurie from Halloween. Laurie is constantly harassed by Michael Myers, and she consistently has gone through hell and back watching people she loved being murdered and has to do it all again. A final girl is somebody who's going to fight till the bitter end and come out of that movie like, what the fuck just happened? I know I'm swearing a lot, but personally, that's how I express myself, and you're welcome. I'm going to bleep them all out so you get to see my lovely little censor bar. Why I'm qualified to talk about final girls in horror movies is because I have been a horror fanatic since I was 12. I watched my first horror movie when I was 11, and I watched Annabelle, and that was fucking traumatizing. So frankly, I feel like I can talk about this. To start the film off, Sidney Prescott's friend Casey was brutally murdered, as well as her boyfriend Steve, by the Scream killer. He asks her what her favorite scary movie is, and when her answer is wrong, she's murdered and gutted and hung up in a tree for her family to find her. That's what kicks off our film, where we find Sidney very disturbed by the fact that this happened, as well as reminiscing on the fact that her mother's death, and her mother was raped and murdered, is coming up, and it was a year before. Her boyfriend has been extremely touch and go on the subject and thinking she needs to get over it in order so he can have sex with her. So this is something that's really important to Sidney's character because she's dealing with a lot of differing opinions all throughout this film, and that really pushes on who she can tell what's right, what's wrong, who to trust, and who to not. And so throughout the film, we see Sidney having amazing feats of strength and character and absolutely fighting for her life and to figure out who this killer is. In the original attack scene, Sidney runs through her house, kicks the Scream character multiple times, lands punches, uses timing in order to throw him off his rhythm so she can escape. As well as she manages to lodge her doors so he can't answer and she can attempt to call 911. This is something really huge about Sidney's character because we see how emboldened and strong she is. However, she does make poor decisions throughout the movie, like deciding to go to her boyfriend's best friend's party in the middle of a curfew because there's a serial killer on the loose. Frankly, I personally like my life and would not go if a serial killer's on the loose because that's just giving death, murder, bad vibes, not very mindful, not very cutesy, not very demure. I don't know though, that's just me. So we're going to be rating Sidney on 4 different key aspects. And so this is Bella's 4-key scale of a final girl. This is important because I developed this based on how I watch horror movies and how I really feel like sometimes the final girl kind of sucks. Like, holy shit, can they be that fucking stupid? I say that about every fucking horror character because I'm like, why the fuck would you open the door when you're already sketched out? Thank you very much, period. Okay, so the first part of my scale is capability. Is she capable of protecting herself? What is she relying on? What is she doing? Number 2 is skills. Does she have survival skills? Can she fight hand to hand? What makes her different than other people? Number 3, bad bitchery. Is she a bad bitch? Is she serving? Is she giving it all? Is she killing it? That's a really hard one because sometimes bad bitchery is subjective, but this is my personal bad bitchery scale. And number 4, does she actually give me final girl vibes? Because you can technically be a final girl, but not give the vibes. And so that's kind of where we're gonna gauge the scale all throughout, and we'll just see how Sidney lands. For competency, I think Sidney gets a 6.5. She has the right idea throughout the film. She's able to handle herself, but sometimes she makes decisions and I'm like, are you stupid? Why the fuck are we doing this? Do not fucking answer the phone if you don't know who the hell it is. I'm 90% sure you had caller ID in the 90s. That's just me though. And who the heck goes to a party when there's a serial killer on the loose? I don't know. That's just my opinion. So she gets a 6 for competency. Skill number 2, skills. She manages to handle herself quite well in multiple scenarios, fighting back. She's able to communicate with others. She's able to stand her ground. But also, in other cases, she doesn't know what to do. When she can't get in contact with the police, she just kind of freezes, which, mind you, I get. You're being chased by a serial killer. Personally, I've never been chased by a serial killer, so I don't know what to do. But I personally think that she could have handled herself a lot better in certain situations. So I'm going to give her around a 7 for skills. For bad bitchery, Sidney Prescott, she is Sidney Prescott. She is an absolute bad bitch. Miss Girl punches Gail Weathers in the face because Gail won't stop harassing her about her dead mother. She stands on business. When her boyfriend was disrespecting her and she didn't feel safe, she got her ass away from him, as she should. So frankly, she gets a 10 out of 10 for bad bitchery. And finally, for final girl vibes, Sidney Prescott's gone through the ringer. I don't know if anyone else has seen all the rest of the Scream movies. She keeps coming back. She never goes away. And frankly, I feel like that is final girl behavior. You go through absolute hell and back. You have fought a crazy psycho killer and survived. You got a 10 out of 10 on the final girl scale because she is the perfect example of a final girl. So the goal of this scale is to at least get a 30 out of 40. And doing some quick math, after tabulating the scores, Sidney Prescott gets a 33 out of 40, which means she is a final girl. So if that made sense to everybody, I hope you really enjoyed that scale. And honestly, give me some feedback down below if whether you want to hear more, if you want more in-depth stuff about my scale and why I picked what I picked. But I frankly feel like with the amount of horror movies I've watched, this makes me pretty skilled and adept in understanding what a final girl is. If you guys enjoyed this episode, leave me a like down in the comments. Follow me on all my socials, Instagram and TikTok at Finalgirlmoments. And please, please follow up for our next episode where we will be covering Midsummer. I don't know if you guys are ready for it, but I'm ready for it. And later down this series, we're going to be covering Terrifier. Maybe Terrifier 2 if the viewers like it. We'll be covering Halloween, Friday the 13th, and so much more. So please follow along. I'm Bella McCullough. Have a great day, guys.